Gabby Petito never goes outside.
New developments in the search for a woman who vanished during a cross-country road trip.
Yeah, police have now officially named her boyfriend as a person of interest in this case.
Gabby Petito kept reaching up and touching her jaw and her throat. Nobody watching that footage in the moment understood what they were looking at. They would. By the time investigators started searching for Gabby Petito, she had already been dead for almost 3 weeks. Nobody knew that yet. What they knew was this. A 22-year-old woman had vanished somewhere between Wyoming and Florida during what was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime, and the man she was engaged to had driven her van home alone and said absolutely nothing about where she was. No explanation, no panic. Just silence for 10 straight days, while her mother called a phone that was never going to answer again. But to understand how a cross-country road trip turned into a homicide investigation, you have to go back to who Gabby Petito actually was, before any of this had a name. Gabby Petito grew up in Blue Point, a small town on Long Island, the kind of kid her parents describe with a specific kind of pride, a spitfire, someone who set a goal and simply did not stop until she reached it. Her parents, Joe Petito and Nichelle Schmidt, split when she was young, but both stayed close, both stayed present, and by every account, Gabby grew up surrounded by people who adored her. Friends remember her smile first, the way she could walk into a room and immediately put people at ease. She was artistic, restless in the best way, always chasing the next thing. She met Brian Laundrie in high school. On the surface, it looked easy, uncomplicated, the kind of relationship parents don't worry about. Nichelle would later say he seemed polite, kind, that she never saw anything in him that raised a flag. When Brian's family relocated to Florida, Gabby went too, moving in with the Laundries, working part-time jobs alongside Brian, the two of them quietly building towards something bigger. That something bigger was the trip. In July of 2021, Gabby and Brian loaded a white Ford Transit van, one they had spent months converting into a livable space with their own hands, and set off from New York with a plan to circle the American West for 4 months. National parks, sunsets. A dream she filmed almost constantly for a small but growing YouTube channel, because Gabby wanted this trip to be the beginning of something, a career built around the outdoors and adventure, and the freedom she'd worked so hard for. For weeks, the footage she posted looked exactly like that dream coming true. Hiking trails, campfire dinners, a young couple living the version of life everyone else was scrolling past on their lunch break. Then came Moab. On August 12, outside a small co-op in Moab, Utah, a stranger called 911 to report a man slapping a woman near a parked van. Police pulled the couple over minutes later, and the bodycam footage from that stop would eventually become some of the most replayed video in the history of true crime coverage online. Gabby is crying, visibly overwhelmed, telling the officer the fighting is her fault, blaming her own anxiety, her own OCD, her own bad mood. Brian has fresh scratches on his face and arm. The officers separate them for the night under Utah's domestic violence policy, and in their report, it's Gabby who gets labeled the predominant aggressor because she had scratched Brian while trying to climb back into her own van. No arrest was made. The next day, the couple got back on the road like nothing had happened. The trip continued north into Wyoming. Around August 17, Brian flew home to Florida alone, saying he needed to move things out of a storage unit, and Gabby waited for him by herself in Salt Lake City for nearly a week. He returned around August 23. They got back in the van together. And 4 days later, everything about this story changes forever because August 27, 2021, is the last day anyone can confirm Gabby Petito was alive. 2 days later, on August 29, a woman driving near Coulter Bay picked up a hitchhiker traveling alone. It was Brian. She would later describe him as strangely clean for someone claiming to have been camping for days, and said he panicked, almost frantically, when he realized they were headed toward the wrong town. He offered them $200 for the 10-mile ride and got out early, less than half an hour after climbing in. On September 1, Brian Laundrie drove Gabby's van back to his parents' house in North Port, Florida, alone. He didn't call Gabby's family. He didn't call police. He parked the van in the driveway and went inside. And for the next 10 days, while Nichelle Schmidt grew more frantic by the hour, Brian Laundrie said absolutely nothing. On September 11, unable to reach her daughter for days, Gabby's mother filed a missing persons report. Police seized the van from the Laundrie property that same day. And this is the moment the story stops being a family's private nightmare and becomes a national one. Because Brian Laundrie's response to a missing persons investigation involving his own fiancée was to hire a lawyer and refuse to say a single word. Not where they'd last been together, not why he'd come home without her, nothing. While the Laundrie family stayed silent, the internet did the opposite. Gabby's case exploded online, amateur investigators combing frame by frame through her old posts, matching backgrounds and geotags, racing to reconstruct her final route before law enforcement could. It worked. That vacationing couple who had accidentally filmed the van at Spread Creek came forward, and their footage helped investigators narrow the search to that exact stretch of forest. On September 17, 6 days after Gabby was reported missing, something happened that nobody expected. Brian's own parents reported him missing too. He had vanished into the Carlton Reserve near their home, a sprawling, swampy nature preserve, and now there were 2 missing people connected to the same disappearing van. 2 days after that, September 19, search teams found human remains at the Spread Creek dispersed camping area, close to where the van had been seen. The FBI confirmed 2 days later what everyone had feared. It was Gabby. Here's where everything the public thought they understood gets rewritten. The initial ruling was homicide, but the full details of Gabby's autopsy would not surface for weeks, and when they did, they told a story far more violent than the argument gone wrong narrative many had assumed. The Teton County Coroner's Office concluded that Gabby died of blunt force injuries to her head and neck, along with manual strangulation.
On Gabby Petito confirms that the young woman was strangled. Petito was last seen alive in August during a trip with her fiancé. Investigators have ruled her death a homicide. That fiancé, Brian Laundrie, disappeared after he returned alone to the Florida home that they shared with his parents. He's considered a person of interest, and police are still trying to find him.
She had been dead for 3 to 4 weeks by the time she was discovered, meaning that for nearly the entire span of the search, the tearful public appeals, the tip lines, the volunteers combing trails, Gabby had already been gone the whole time. The manhunt the country was watching had never had a chance of finding her alive. It just didn't know that yet. And the person responsible had already vanished into a Florida swamp. On September 23, federal prosecutors issued a warrant for Brian's arrest, but notably, it was not for murder. There wasn't enough yet to charge him with that. It was for unauthorized use of a debit card, for spending more than $1,000 of Gabby's money in the days after her death, while using her own phone to fake messages that made it look like she was still alive. By then, Brian was already gone. He had walked away from his parents' house on September 13 and never returned. And for the next 5 weeks, the Carlton Reserve became the site of an increasingly tense, increasingly public search. Teams moved through swamp and scrub. Cameras followed his own father into the reserve to help look for him. And then, on October 20, after floodwaters that had covered part of the reserve during the initial search finally receded, searchers found skeletal remains in an area they had already checked once before, back when it was still underwater. Forensic dentistry confirmed it. Brian Laundrie, found with a backpack, a notebook, and a revolver. On November 23, medical examiners in Sarasota ruled his cause of death, a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. The final piece came from the notebook, In January of 2022, the FBI confirmed it contained a written admission, Brian Laundrie taking responsibility for Gabby's death. Months later, in June of 2022, the Laundrie family's own lawyer released the entry publicly. In it, Brian claimed Gabby had fallen into water and been badly hurt, and that he had ended her life believing it was merciful, that it was what she wanted. The coroner's findings tell a very different story than the one Brian wrote for himself. Blunt force injuries, manual strangulation, not the quiet, painless ending of a man cradling someone he loved. Evidence of force, evidence of a struggle, evidence of time. The FBI officially closed its investigation that same January, stating clearly that no other person besides Brian Laundrie was found to be involved in Gabby's death. For Gabby's family, that closure did not end anything. In 2022, Nischel filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Brian's parents, Chris and Roberta Laundrie, alleging they had known their son killed Gabby while publicly pretending, for weeks, to hope she'd be found safe. A Florida judge later denied the Laundries' attempts to have the case dismissed, and the lawsuit moved toward trial before both sides ultimately reached a settlement, reportedly worth $3 million. What never changes, through every lawsuit and every new documentary, is the same young woman in that Moab parking lot, crying, blaming herself, touching her own throat without realizing what she was signaling. A woman whose last message to her own family wasn't even written by her. A woman who, by every account from the people who loved her most, simply wanted to leave. Gabby's family eventually channeled their grief into the Gabby Petito Foundation, an organization dedicated to domestic violence awareness, built from the belief that the warning signs in this case were visible the entire time to anyone trained to look for them. Nischel has said publicly that the foundation is how she keeps her daughter present, that Gabby works through her now, and that turning unbearable grief into something protective for other people is the only way forward she's found. Years on, the Moab bodycam footage is still shown in police training programs across the country, used as a case study in what a strangulation survivor can look like when she's blaming herself instead of the person who hurt her. That, more than any headline, may be the most lasting thing to come out of the summer of 2021. Do you believe justice was served? Let us know what you think really happened, and if this case affected you, remember that resources and support exist for exactly this kind of situation. Subscribe to Suburban Homicide for more.
What does it say? Where are y'all from?
Across the street.
Or you live in the neighborhood?
Yeah. Get this side again. Yeah, there we go. That's good now. Very good. Hopefully they can see it.